My friend and I always used to walk through a wonderful spacious park when we were younger. It was full of tall trees and it was very nicely maintained. In this large park there was an abandoned mansion. I can't really say how long it had been there, but on that day the front door of the mansion was wide open. The two of us decided to check out what was inside the place. As we inched through the door, the very first thing we noticed was that the mansion's floor was littered with crumpled up pieces of paper. We looked at each other and observed that there was no furniture, nothing except for those wrinkled balls of paper. The mansion had 6 rooms on its main floor, and every room we entered bore more and more scrunched up pieces of paper. We decided to open up one of the paper balls to see what was inside. Our curiosity got the better of us. I picked up a single wrinkled piece, and as my friend picked up another, I unfolded my paper, smoothing out its bends and dents. At that moment, it was almost as if a piece of a rainbow emerged before our eyes, and I was suddenly standing next to a large window in one of the upstairs rooms of the house. I was looking outside into the large park when I looked down at the piece of paper I held. It read, "Look outside the large window that oversees the park in the upstairs parlour." I dropped the piece of paper and it fluttered gracefully to the ground. Meanwhile, I stared at my open hands in a bout of horror. Dazed and utterly perplexed, I found my way downstairs and met up with my friend. He was in the kitchen, sitting at a round table that hadn't been there before. Where did that come from? I wondered. My friend stared at his opened paper and reread the words several times before he looked at me and turned the page my way. It said, "Go to the kitchen and sit at the round table." We stared at each other for a few moments, vaguely afraid, but then we began to chuckle. Within seconds, we were laughing our heads off, marvelling at our newfound game. We could hardly believe what had happened, but being young as we were, the mystery was endlessly exciting. We decided again to open up another scrunched piece of paper. As we opened up the crumpled papers on the floor, we experienced the same sudden flash of rainbow colours. But this time I ended lying down in the field behind the mansion. When I peered onto the paper in my right hand, it read, "Lie down in the field behind the mansion." I giggled uncontrollably. After a few minutes of running around the house, I found my friend collecting multiple balls of paper in his arms, eager to experience more of these strange, exciting phenomena. We both got the gist of what was happening at this point. We had no idea as to how it was possible, but we decided to have more fun with it. The supernatural always had a way of captivating our hearts. After a few more run-throughs with these strange mini teleportation devices, I began to feel apprehensive. I wondered if at one point I would be placed somewhere I didn't want to be, or I'd be made to do something that I didn't enjoy. We continued though. Minute after minute we unfolded many papers and travelled through bedrooms, closets, trees, But then, after having been on the roof of the mansion, I stood before my friend, dead on the living room floor. I didn't scream. I couldn't murder him. I read on my crumpled page as I felt a surge of vomit and bile rising into my throat. Nothing came out, but the sickness in my throat spread to my stomach, my head, and my heart. I didn't know what to do at this point. I began to scream and shout, praying to God for this to be a nightmare. I wanted it to go away. I wanted to rewind our day and be outside again, together walking underneath the trees. I willed myself to be calm, and I hesitantly unfolded another paper in the hopes that the problem would correct itself. Once again, I saw the colours of the rainbow, and I found myself standing behind a tree several meters away from the house. I could clearly see the front door within a few instants. I saw both myself and my friend walk through that door. I began to wonder if I had died or if I was having an out-of-body experience. I looked at the sheet in my hand, and the only words scrawled upon it were, "Time will repeat itself, and a paradox will take place, and it will be allowed." That gave me an idea. In my pocket remained the paper that made me kill my friend. Without looking at it, I crumpled it back up. Quietly, I followed my other self, who had separated from my friend, as he explored the rooms of the house. As I crept behind him, he turned around very suddenly. Before he could utter a syllable, I forced the paper in front of my eyes, and in a flash of rainbow colours, I was able to kill my other self. The laws of time allowed me to take over my dead self's place in this world, and also because of the fact that it was allowed to happen. As it was written on the second piece of paper that I had on me, which reversed time, it must have control over time and paradoxes, which made me now the new alive and present of my other dead self. I hid my limp, bleeding other dead self in a cupboard in the upstairs bathroom to rot. To my great relief, I heard my friend call my name from downstairs. My friend who managed to stay alive, and well, my best friend. When I went downstairs, he greeted me excitedly, smiling childishly, and being blissfully unaware of the situation. I pretended that nothing had happened. In a heartbeat, I told him that the house creeped me out and that it would be much better if we left. After that day, we never went near the mansion again. I don't know if anyone saw or heard about anything that happened between us, but I recently heard from another friend that the house had been demolished. I dreaded the probable prospect that my corpse was uncovered in the bathroom cabinet. I work for a small newspaper company, and I usually just write about things happening in the community. One story though got me particularly interested, and it was about a woman who lived in filth. Her neighbours had been complaining about odd foul smells coming from her house. It isn't the type of story that I usually do, but it was different, and that's what got me interested. When I got to her house, I could clearly see from the front of the house how filthy it all was. The thought of going inside started to become a regrettable decision. I mean, first encounters count, right? And I didn't mean to be so judgmental straight away, but looking at her house, it gave off the sort of impression that this was a person who didn't look after herself that much. I also talked with some of the locals, and what they told me about her didn't give off a good judgment of character. This woman was clearly out of touch with everything around her. At the same time, I wanted to know more about her, and me, being a nosy person, I couldn't help but wanting to know more about her. Clearly, something had happened in her life to make her live like this. I had already called her to make sure she was okay with me looking into her life, and she agreed to show me her way of life and to explain to me why she lives the way she does. The filth had a stench, and I was surprised that she hadn't died from any bacteria, because it seemed like the right environment for bacteria and viruses to survive. Her mental state was questionable, and she had old cassette players and VHS players all over the place, which don't really exist anymore. When I asked her why she lived like this, all that she could tell me was that as long as filth smelled like the way it should, it was all good. Everything was a mess, and I don't know why, but it kind of all got me being grateful for all the things I had in my life. On the other hand, I am sure someone with OCD would love to clean every speck of this place, and with everything out of order, it told me that her life must have been out of control. Things were broken, and she survived on government benefits and some inheritance from her parents. I could hear small things moving around, and they must have been rats or some other animal. It's weird how animals can survive in such mess. I guess their immune system must be better than ours. Actually, maybe this woman's immune system might be amazing at this point because she has survived this long in this mess. She told me about her mother and father. She was brought up in a 5-bedroom house. She also had 2 younger siblings, and after she had told me that she had siblings, I quickly assumed that her siblings had wanted nothing to do with her, which I was gravely wrong about. I tried asking more questions about her upbringing, but all she told me was, just go to the house of my childhood and notice how the filth gives off an amazing aroma. I then went to her childhood home, and I could clearly see that it had been abandoned for many years, and Mother Nature had clearly took over the house. It's sad how houses begin to go under after they had been abandoned, and it reminded me of the only thing I had remembered in my sociology class before I changed courses to journalism. It's people that give meaning to buildings and materialistic things, not the object itself. I kicked the door down as I could clearly see that the front door was past its prime. From what the house looked like, I had expected odour and stench to hit my nose, but instead I got to smell the most amazing aroma I had ever smelt in my life. I then started searching her childhood home for anything interesting to find. This woman's childhood home was exactly like her own house, and I don't know why, but I started to become irritated by this woman. In my generation, we are finding it difficult to even buy a home, and even if someone from my generation has managed to somehow buy a home, it's hard to keep it maintained. Yet this woman has managed to live in a big childhood home as well as having her own home, which clearly she had decided to neglect it. It's unfair, but I guess life is just unfair. It was all a mess, and I was beginning to find it all predictable with the neglect of having any care or pride in one's own life. Maybe her parents were abusive, and I wondered more about her siblings, because now I wanted to know why she was so alone in the world. We all need someone, no matter who we are, but then again, loneliness is a big problem in Western civilization, and we even have someone in the government whose main job is to tackle things like loneliness. Loneliness becomes more apparent as we get older, and this woman was old now, and with the inventions of social media and computer games, it's made loneliness even more stronger. The only good but odd thing about this woman's childhood home is the nice aroma and smell. I decided to follow the aroma because I couldn't resist it anymore. The aroma could be smelt the most from behind the sofas. And you know how in cartoons, when one cartoon character follows a pack of sweets, all lined up because it was being set up? That's what happened to me. When I looked behind the sofas, I gasped with horror and with utter disbelief, because I never thought that I would ever look upon something so disgusting and completely random. I saw 4 skeleton bones, still giving off a perfume-like scent. And this is not the type of smell you would think death could give off. I mean, with an amazing smell present, you would think something was full of life to give such a scent. I went back to see the woman, and I didn't call the police just yet because I wanted to know more, and I wanted her permission first of how to proceed with everything that I had just found. When I told this woman of filth, of what I had experienced in her childhood home, she started tearing up. Instead of calling the police, she just turned on the VHS player, and I started to watch something. Like an explanation video. At the same time, I also have to shamefully admit, finding all of this would have progressed my career in the journalism world. Even though I had just found something terrible, my career coming to my mind showed how I could have profited from this. Anyhow, the video told me more things about what was really going on. Hello. My name is Dr. Rogerson Peake. I have invented a pill that could make any dead person smell nice. When a body starts decomposing, it usually starts to smell. But with this pill, a decomposing body will be the most sweet-smelling thing you have ever smelt. The cassette player kept on playing. After watching the whole video, a few thoughts came to mind. Yes, the pill would give the dead person a bit more dignity by smelling nice, and it will also help people who deal with dead bodies, like in hospitals. But at the same time, this might be a great advantage for a murderer or serial killer. Imagine someone had murdered someone in your home, but the murdered person had this pill before being murdered. It could be some time before you notice something is off. Something smelling nice usually doesn't give an image of death or tell you that something is decomposing. It's always the nasty smell which makes us think something is off. Like when I was in this woman's childhood home, I honestly didn't think I would find something to be dead. Do you see how this might be an advantage for a serial killer or murderer? And I started to understand why this woman lived like the way she lived now for such a long time. I felt bad for being so judgmental or for thinking about my career gain of this whole story. I also started to glue together who those skeletons belonged to. From common sense, those skeletons behind the sofa in her childhood home must have been her 2 parents and 2 siblings. and I thought they had just abandoned her because of the way she had lived her life. "Is someone trying to kill you?" I asked this woman. My whole family took part in the experiment to eat the pill. We were struggling for money at the time, and they promised us that they would pay us lots of money to eat the pill. They weren't 100% honest with us, and none of us knew what the pill was made for exactly, she told me. She started crying a little bit, and the more I understood her story and why she lived the way she did, it was sad, just so sad. How we humans can be so unsympathetic or not care enough to understand someone but rather to judge and cast aside. After taking the pill, one midnight someone broke into my home, and I was just a child back then, and this man had murdered my mother, father, and both my siblings. I hid in a secret wall cupboard in my room, which my father had built. For weeks this strange man who broke into my house observed my whole family's dead bodies. They all started to smell nice as they decomposed. I overheard his talk on the phone, and they wanted to use this pill in war and other scenarios where death is common, but they wanted to hide the deaths and murders. If something smells nice, no one would ever think something has died, she explained to me. She managed to escape when the strange man went for a smoke in her garden, and I couldn't believe what I had just been told. This story was not just a story, but probably one of the biggest scandals in the 21st century. I had to write about this and get this story out, and I phoned the police about the 4 skeletons in this woman's childhood home. Something had to be done, and we all know how shady the government can be and some of the things they can be capable of. This woman deserved justice. I hugged her and she pleaded me not to go to the police, but obviously I decided to go against her. I went back to my flat, and as soon as I entered, a beautiful scented aroma hit my nose. But I never sprayed anything inside my flat recently. I checked my whole flat and I found a dead body in my bathtub. The dead body had a note attached to it, which read, "Be wary of your steps, lad." I straight away drove to the woman's house, and this time, instead of the scent of filth hitting my nose, it was a perfume-like aroma, and I knew she had been murdered in her own living room. There was a note on her body which read, "We are watching, and the dead body in your flat has been taken now." And I couldn't believe it. I checked her childhood home, and everything inside had been taken, and no sign of police of any kind. They knew I would check on this woman after finding a dead body in her apartment, as well as her childhood home. I am being watched now. You know, getting a full 1 hour break at work should be easily given to all workers, but managers and owners seem to find ways around it. In every workplace I have been employed at, all my breaks have been disturbed, or even worse, I didn't get to have a full 1 hour break. Especially in times of economic downturn, it's always that guy at the bottom who gets the worst deal out of it all. We all must work more longer and have less breaks to create more profits for the owners. Only by the luck of the gods, which only happen ever so occasionally, will you get to have an undisturbed 1 hour break. A couple of months ago, I started applying for new jobs and got a new job straight away, which promised to give workers fair treatment. By fair treatment, they meant getting a full 1 hour break and giving you all the annual holidays that workers deserved, which was set up by the unions. When I spoke to the managers during my interview, they seemed nice and down to earth. All my past managers seemed bitter and grumpy, but these lot seemed to have a different outlook on things. The job role title was called a concierge for a residential building. The residential building was a brand spanking new one, and a lot of new building were being built to tackle the housing crisis. Anyhow, I fitted right into the job, and on my first day everything was going smoothly. On my first day, my manager told me that I don't decide when to go on my break, but my break times come to me. I honestly didn't know what my manager meant by this, but I was kind of busy to know more at the time. When I got inside the elevator to go up to the 9th floor, I couldn't believe it when the elevator had stopped working and was stuck on the 4th floor due to some mechanical issue. The company that built the elevators inside the residential building contacted me through the elevator. I was stuck inside and told me that a mechanic was on his way in an hour. Then my manager phoned me and he told me that he knew that the lift had broken down and knew that it would take the mechanic an hour to get here. My manager also told me that being stuck inside the elevator for an hour was my real break. Like my manager had told me before, that I don't get to decide when to have my break, but break times choose when to come to me, like being stuck inside an elevator. After the mechanic finally came and fixed the elevator, after an hour, I had a word with my manager. He thought nothing of it and didn't really care for what I had to say because I managed to have a full 1 hour uninterrupted break inside a broken lift. Then another time, I became stuck inside the stairs and the doors on the stairs aren't locked by a key but a fob system, so tenants need a fob card to get in and out of the stairs, just like how they need to get into the building. Basically, the fob card system had gone weird and all the doors which were connected to the system were all on lockdown. I had decided to use the stairs because I was scared of using an elevator after it had broken down, but now I was stuck inside the stairs and my fob card wouldn't work and let me out into the corridors of the building. My manager phoned me and told me that he knew the fob card system was down for an hour, and that hour being stuck inside the stairs was my official break. At that moment, I told myself that I was going to find another job because this was just crazy. I had never worked in a place where break times chose where and when a person gets to have a break. There was one time where I thought I wasn't going to get a break because nothing was breaking down or becoming faulty and trapping me inside a certain place in the building for an hour. For the first time in my life, I was happy and glad not to be getting a break. But when my shift was over and I got into my car, the car gate was down and wouldn't open for an hour. I was stuck inside the car park, which belonged to the building, and workers weren't allowed to park inside the car park, and my manager phoned me. He told me off for parking inside the car park, which only tenants could park in, and told me that it would take an hour for the mechanic to come and fix the car gate. That hour would be my break, even though my shift had finished and there was nothing else I could do but just wait it out. I couldn't find any new jobs because jobs were really drying up in my area. Now I had put in a month's holiday, which I needed, and it had been accepted. I decided that the whole of September would be my holiday, but on the last day of August, as I got into an elevator, because I needed to get to the top floor, because something had happened on the 9th floor, the elevators stopped working again on the 5th floor, and I was trapped once again. An automatic call-out from the computer inside the elevator made to the company that built the elevators inside the building, but they had bad news, and they told me that they wouldn't have any available mechanic for a whole month. Then my manager phoned me and told me that the month spent inside the elevator was to be my holiday, because not only do your breaks choose where and when you get to have a break, but even your holidays choose where and when you spend your holiday. I am still stuck inside the elevator, and I am counting the days when this month will end. Also, a hatchet opens every 5 hours, and food is given to me, and I have no idea how that works. After I get out of here, probably smelling of body odor, I am not working here anymore.